for the Q&A. Oh, good, the recording's in progress, great. So I'm sure you may already know about me, but just in case, my name is Marcela Landrez. I'm a freelance book editor now, but I used to be an editor at Simon & Schuster. Even to this day, there's not enough Latinas who are acquisitions editors at publishing companies, especially the large ones. So I speak from perspective, not just as someone who was an editor at a major publishing house, but also someone who was a Latina editor at a publishing house. So I can speak to the particular challenges and opportunities that Latino writers have within an industry that was not built by and for us. And I also want to speak specifically, I mean, I could talk for hours about the craft of writing, I could talk for hours about the business of publishing, but for this particular breakout session, we're going to talk about, focus on the business side of it, because I find that writers who focus solely on the craft of writing and are not willing or able to learn the business side of publishing are what I call unpublished writers or unhappily published writers. There's a better way. Ideally, my goal is to help writers in general, and Latino writers in particular, be happily published, because you only got 3 choices. You're going to be unpublished, unhappily published, or happily published. I only want you to be happily published and avoid the first 2. All right, so let's focus on how to get you happily published and avoid you being unpublished or unhappily published. So I would like you, if you take away nothing else from this breakout session, I want you to think 2 words: Shark Tank. Why Shark Tank? Why the TV show Shark Tank? Because Shark Tank is all about money, 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 business, business, business. It's not about craft, creativity, innovation, which is what all the entrepreneurs on the show are. They're creators. They're creating something from nothing, just like you guys. You're creating something from nothing. But the show is all about the pitch and getting a shark to invest their money and giving them the wisdom to help them blow up, right? So if you've never seen an episode of Shark Tank, you only need to see one. It's like Law and Order. You've seen one episode, you've seen them all. It's a formula, but it's really eye-opening. And I would like you to, if you've never before seen Shark Tank, after this, when you sit down and watch TV, find it. It's everywhere, like Law and Order. There's always an episode of Shark Tank somewhere in the universe on television, and you can find it on YouTube, I'm sure. And watch at least one whole episode from beginning to end. And what you will find, and this is the takeaway I want you to take from this breakout session, every entrepreneur who shows up on the Shark Tank has a finished product. They don't show up with an idea or a or a dream or a wish or a protocol for the product and ask the sharks what they think if they've got a chance, if it maybe, there's a market for it, or should they put in the time and energy to finish it? No, they got a finished product, and hopefully an impressive one that the shark would want to immediately throw money at them and help them take it to where they want to go. And book publishing is like that in the sense that it's not the job of literary agents or editors who work in publishing houses to help you decide whether you should finish that manuscript, or whether you should invest your time in revising the manuscript, or whether you should do this, that, and the other to help you get published. They're not writing teachers, they're not writing coaches. They're publishing professionals. Their job is to publish your book, to get it out into the world. So your job is to create the product that they can sell. And that's on you. It's not the agent's job to help you create the product or finish the manuscript. It's not the editor's job to help you create the product or finish the manuscript. That's you and you and you alone. You can get other people to help you along the way, but that, if nothing else, I want you to take away from this session that your writing, your manuscript is your product, and it's got to be finished, market ready, as polished as possible, to the point where all a publishing company needs to do is slap on the cover and stick it on the shelf and start making money. That's your job. That's on you, not the agent, not the editor at the publishing house, not anyone else. You. Shark Tank. Watch an episode and you'll understand it better. All right, moving on from there. So what can you do to help you get to the point where you can present yourself as a professional and not a novice? Okay. Here's one tip. Read. And I'm sure you're thinking, I read all the time. I'm an aspiring author. I am a published author. I read all the time. Yes, but you need to read strategically. If all you're reading is writers who've been published for the first time 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, they might be great writers. They might be the classics, but that's not going to help you from a marketing perspective, that's not going to help get agents and editors excited about you, or even, quite honestly, the media, book reviewers and book readers. The best way to help yourself get your work published is to focus, I don't want to say exclusively, but primarily on writers who have been published. Their first book has been published within the last 5 years, maybe, if I'm going to be generous, within the last 10 years. If you're reading writers whose first book was published in the 70s, well, guess what? The publishing landscape was very different in the 70s. And what agents and editors were looking for in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the aughts are not what they're looking for today. They're looking for what's making money today, not what was making money yesterday, right? So take that away. Read strategically, read books by authors whose first books were published preferably within the last 5 years, maybe within the last 10 years. Anything longer than that? No, 5 to 10 years. So, because while it's possible that agents and editors are looking for the next Julia Alvarez, what they're really looking for is the next Elizabeth Acevedo, right? Okay, so moving on. The second tip I would give you is to not even think of querying agents when you think you're ready for publication, or editors at small publishing houses or university presses where you don't need an agent. Don't even think of querying agents or editors with your book idea until your manuscript is completely written, and not just written, not just like a first draft, revised, polished, perfect, to the point where all the publisher has to do, as I said before, is slap on the cover and stick it on the shelf. So for fiction, as you may know, you need a complete manuscript. And for anything that reads like a novel, like narrative nonfiction, like a memoir that's supposed to read like a novel, you have to have a complete manuscript ready to go. Anything that's straight nonfiction, where it's not about the writing, it's not about the narrative, like a self-help book or a business book or a cookbook, then you don't actually need to write the whole manuscript. You need to write a proposal. If you have no idea what a book proposal is, if you've never written one, you can go to my website. I'll show you what this looks like. I don't know if you can see it. Okay, it's something called Book Proposal Basics. If you go to my website, MARCELALANDRES.com, click on services, click on proposal critique, scroll on down. There's a line that says, to schedule a proposal critique, please do the following. And there's like 5 things you got to do. The first one is click on Book Proposal Basics so that you know how to write one before you try to hire me to critique it. And so you will see this document, Book Proposal Basics, that tells you pretty much everything that needs to be in the book proposal, is available for free on my website. So you could go there and get it and download it and start from there. Okay, tip number 3. I don't like to use the word never because it's so negative, but for this particular, I'll make an exception here. Never let an agent or an editor at a publishing house be your first reader of your manuscript or your proposal. They should be the last reader before you get a book contract. So your first readers should ideally be the members of your writing critique group. If you're not a member of a writing critique group, or if you're a member of a bad writing critique group, because such things exist, you need to find or form your own writing critique group and workshop every page of your manuscript or your proposal through your critique group. If you don't know how to find one or form it, you have no idea what a critique group is, or if you've had bad experiences, this one here's a fantastic book. I'm going to try to, this is the Writing and Critique Group Survival Guide by Becky Levine. Writing and Critique Group Survival Guide by Becky Levine. It's fabulous. It will teach you everything you need to know about how to find the group that already exists. If you want to create your own group, how to do that. You could do it in person, you could do it online. And then once you're in the group, what do you do? How do you give critique? How do you take critique? How do you use critique? This book will tell you everything. How to fire someone for your group if they turn out to be a misfit. Everything in here. So those are my top 3 tips. Read books by authors whose first books were published within the last 5, maybe 10 years. You have to complete, before you even think of querying agents or editors, you really have to finish your manuscript or proposal. And never let an agent or an editor at a publishing house be your first reader. They should be your last reader, before you get a book contract. All right, let's open it up to Q&A. What questions do you have? How can I help you get from where you are to where you want to be with your writing? who you want to raise hands, or you don't have questions? You must have questions. Don't be shy.
I have a question. This is Gabby.
Okay, Gabby.
So as I mentioned before, when I was in graduate school, I wrote a children's book, trying to complete my master's degree in social work. So my question is this, I know you mentioned, revising. Once you get to the point of revising and having it's a children's book is different, I guess, I'm assuming,
Yes.
comparison to a novel. So what is your recommendation? What do you recommend when it pertains to children's book?
The very first thing you should do is join I'm going to get the acronym wrong, I'm going to try to say it right. It's the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. So it's SCBWI. You Google that, and there's this fantastic website that has a treasure trove of resources. You should join. I can't remember what it costs, but it's not a lot of money. And then you could spend a year just going through the website at all that they have classes, they have books, they have DVDs, they have contests. You should avail yourself of every resource particular to what kind of children's book you're writing. So they've got children's books, they've got chapter books, they've got, early readers, they have middle grade, they have young adult. Do everything. I would say for very last, maybe they have, I think, 2 conferences a year, like one, at least pre-COVID, they had one in LA and one in New York every year. I don't know if they still do, if it's online. That's like the last thing you do when you have a polished manuscript ready to go. And then I would say when you're at that point, you can go to a conference and they have one-on-ones with agents. And that would be maybe a great way to find an agent. But before you even think of doing that, take classes, get feedback, join a writing critique group that's just for children's book writers, and workshop your work that way. Because you might think, oh, it's just, children's book is this many pages or words long. It is harder to write a book for children than for adults, because every word counts. And it's a very particular market. Having said that, I think it's probably the best time in the history of publishing, probably, to be an author of color, to be an other and writing a book for the children's market, because they know they have a desperate need for books by and for children of color. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much, Marcela. Mine is focused on immigration, just my, coming to the US. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Very, very welcome. Who else has a question?
I have a question for you.
Okay.
This is actually, well, my late husband was a writer. He used to write poetry. I have saved mostly all of his poetry that I can get together. And I wanted to put a book together. It's more of a personal book for the kids, but also the poetry is so beautifully written that I want to share it, not just with my children. How do I go about doing that?
Poetry is a world unto itself. On the plus side, there's so little money to be made in poetry, you don't even bother getting an agent. You just go directly to publishing houses. I think your best bet is to compile the poetry into a collection and maybe submit it to poetry contests. And that might be, because sometimes the award for a contest is to get publication for a poetry collection, so you have a book. And that might be the way to go, because it's going to be hard for a publishing press to work with you to edit or the poems individually. I think you probably have to present it as this is a done deal because the author isn't here. So I think poetry contests, maybe poetry, because there are poetry contests that are just for single poems. This will be a poetry contest for poetry collections.
Okay. Thank you.
That was actually a great question, because I have a collection of prose poetry. And I put together a blog. That blog has all of my writings. I mean, there's just so many, I don't remember how many, and some are English, some are Spanish, and others are bilingual, Spanglish. And they're all stories of various events in my life, but written in a prose style. And I would like to put them all together as a collection into a book with all sorts of images, maybe even like a coffee table type of book. That's what I envisioned.
Okay, are you planning on self-publishing, or do you want a publisher to with Okay,
I want to publish it. I want to, yeah.
no, but you want to self-publish it where you're spending your own money, or you want an actual traditional publisher to do it?
I have no idea. I have no
Okay.
idea.
All right, well, here's the thing, like if you ask 10 different people, you get 10 different answers. For me, I'm not the biggest fan of self-publishing because in my experience, 99.9%, without exaggeration, of self-published books don't find a readership. And your goal is to have readers. So the exception tend to be people who write in genre fiction. And by genre, I mean horror, sci-fi, fantasy, romance. And they're prolific. They publish a book every year to get a body of work very quickly. So if you're a very fast writer and you write in those genre categories, then self-publishing might be for you. But again, the advantage and the disadvantage of poetry is that it's just so hard to make any money at all.
Yeah.
For a publisher,
I am working with a publisher,
Okay.
who's happens to be a personal friend of mine, and I've done some editing for her.
right.
Under the table, but I think I will go that way.
Yeah.
First.
Well, it's just that, a coffee table book is very expensive.
Mhm.
And the more production intensive a book is, the more expensive it is, the fewer copies to sell. So, poetry is already such a hard sell that if there isn't a compelling reason to make it expensive, like a cookbook, it needs to be, have beautiful photos, illustrations like that. Or obviously a children's book has to have illustrations. It's going to be, a poetry book does not have to be production intensive. So you just making a already hard situation harder. So I would say, but I'm not a fan of self-publishing because basically you're taking your money, you're burning it. You just take your dollars and burn it. That's that.
My idea is to make it profitable. I mean, it wouldn't make sense
Okay.
for me to burn my money away. I want
So
profit.
exactly. So unless you're a member of the 1%, I'm not a fan of wasting money. I'm the child of
Right.
immigrants. We don't waste money.
Right.
So I would say, first of all, take all your poetry down because it's considered published if it's on a blog. So take it off, take it down, put it away. And then maybe focus on writing new poems because they've never been published. And then individually or as a collection, submit the contest because that's the best way to get publication, is to submit your collection of new poems. You can maybe publish 20% of the poems in the collection in little literary magazines. So I would say start with brand new poems because all the poems you've written so far have been published already, and that's not helpful.
So that's considered published and I can't reuse those?
By some presses. Every press is different, but my understanding is some presses might consider that published. So you don't want to put anything out on the internet that you want actually published in book form by a traditional publisher because they're going to consider that already published. So
Okay. Wow.
So I mean, you could take them down or leave them up and just leave them there for posterity and then write new poems and try to get that new collection published. And I would say maybe up to 20% of those new poems in a collection can be published individually in literary journals, right? And that will help you. And then submit the whole collection to a contest and get it, what a reward is publication. And that's probably your best bet.
Okay. Thank you so much, Marcela.
You're welcome. Who else has
That's
questions?
helpful.
Don't be shy. There's time.
I think I can ask one question. Hi, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. My question is, let's say I have like draft 10 of a manuscript, friends have looked at it, beta readers have looked at it, and I think I'm ready to start querying agents, but I'm not, I'm not sure. What would be like an acceptable amount, like what acceptable amount of money should I expect to put towards like a professional editor before querying?
Well, I would say, freelance editors like me are the last thing a writer should do before sending it to an agent. Or if they're doing it without an agent, going straight to a small press where they don't need an agent, then a freelance editor should be the last reader right before they submit it for querying. I'm the expensive route. You want to do it for free. That's why I really recommend critique groups. Are you a member of a critique group?
No, I just moved to Austin, so I'm still trying to settle in and find a group.
Well, first of all, congratulations on having a 10th draft. Yay. Because just getting that first draft is a big deal. So getting to the point where you've revised and revised and revised, not enough writers do revising. And that's really what writing is. Writing is revising. And that first draft is just vomit on the page. Revision after revision after revision. That's where your writing chops come in. So I'm just very thrilled to hear that you're that far in. Yay. I would say first critique it, buy the writing critique, this book by Becky Levine, read it, form a group, and workshop every page of that manuscript. And I would be shocked if you didn't end up revising it after having, it
Right.
critiqued by your critique group. And then at that point, there's no, everyone charges differently, some charge more, some charge less. I would say those of us who have worked at a big publishing house, like the Simon Schuster's of the world, do tend to charge more. But just be careful who you hire, because there are people who have never worked in a publishing house. They have no experience in the industry. They've maybe self-published a book and they're like, hey, I'm going to put myself out as a freelance editor. And people hire them. And I'm like, I don't understand. Because for me, it's not just about editing the manuscript, because obviously I edit, but it's really, for me, it's like, I'm going to talk about, this is what the acquisition process is. This is what happens at Ed Board. This is what agents really mean when they say this. This is what editors really mean. Like, I've been inside the process, and I teach writers, this is what you need to know, about the business side, from an insider's point of view. So I would say just be very wary who you hire. Make sure that there are plenty of people like me who have worked at a major publishing house. So hire someone who has worked at the kind of publishing company you want to be published by one day. I can't give you a specific dollar amount, but there are so many of us. I'm sure you could comparison shop, and you can certainly get quotes and then compare and contrast and see what works with your budget.
Awesome. That's very insightful. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hey, Marcela. So have you yourself written a book that we can support? And if so, can you post the link in the chat?
I did, publish a little ebook some time ago. It's not, long story short, it's like, it used to be on a website, now it's not. Yeah. But at the short answer, I did, but it's not available right now. I mean, if you guys really wanted it, you could send me an email and I'll be like, we'll figure out something. It's not something you can just click on and buy. But thank you for that question. I have to get that link up on my website one day soon. But thank you, Lynette. Any other questions? Don't be shy. There must be something I can help you with to get your book published. No one?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, oops, sorry. Hi, how are you?
Hi.
So I'm a financial advisor, and so we're highly regulated on everything, marketing and all that stuff. And so I want to write a book, but I don't know exactly what topic, right? So there's a lot of things I could talk about, but I don't know. That's where my thing is what should I focus on? And then, and so how do you create is there a process or a system? Because I think it's just once you start writing, then you can finish. But for me, it's because it looks too big for me to take the first step. So what would you recommend when we're in that situation where I don't know if I should do a children's book? Because I feel that there's a huge need for that, especially in the Latino community where most of the parents don't really understand money. And if they're new immigrants, they do not understand the banking system. So, how do we educate kids and maybe create a curriculum at school and all that stuff? So that's one idea. And then the other is, I could write my, my story or I could write, I don't know where to start and I don't even know how to pick the subject.
That's a great question, because I think the more specific you are, the easier it is. I agree. I like the way your mind works. I will say I love the idea of a children's book, because one of my favorite books is a book called Dia Isa Wants a Car by Meg Medina. And even before my daughter was born, I have a 3-year-old, I had that book, on my shelf, waiting for her to be born and be like, I want to share this book with you, because it's about a girl who saves money along with her. Dia Isa wants a car. They don't have money. They save money over a long period of time. And the young girl helps save money too. So it shows that a little girl can help the local bodega stack fruit and make money that way. She can help a local neighbor feed her cats, and so it showed that children have agency. So I would say anything about financial literacy, I think there's a need for, especially in children's books, whether it's a picture book or a middle grade book or even a young adult book, because I sort of feel like other than that picture book, I really don't see very much about financial literacy for kids, and kids desperately need this information. They don't teach it in school, and parents talking about money with their kids is worse than sex. They're more likely to talk about sex than money with their kids. It's crazy. So I would say start, and also the other thing I would mention, because several of you mentioned you were thinking about children's books. I feel like children's books is a more exciting part of publishing than the adult part, especially fiction. It is so hard to try to get fiction published in the adult side. And there are more Latina editors in the children's side of publishing the adult side. What you may or may not know is that the children's side of publishing editorially within publishing houses is very separate in a large part. I mean, some publishing companies only do children's books and they don't do adult. Some only do adult books and they don't do children's. The ones that do children's and adults, they're different departments, different marketing departments, different publicity departments, different editorial departments, different production departments. They don't talk to each other. The sales reps might be the same. You know, the printers are probably the same, or maybe not.
What about which genre is most profitable? Like, I mean, I'm a financial advisor. I want to make money. So how does that? Which one is the one that sells the most? Like, what would you see? I mean, I'm like a James Clear, like anything with habits, like I'll buy it. I buy business books all the time. I might not have ever time to write, like I'll buy a fiction book if somebody says it's really good, but I probably won't have time to read it. I'll just listen to it on Audible. So I just wanted to know what.
To answer your question, like I don't know, like I don't have statistics in front of me, but my sense is that maybe young adult, because young adult is where movies come out of, and that's where the real money is, right? There's series, there's trilogies. Though, you know, good children's books that backlist forever, like Dr. Seuss or like a Charlotte's Web or Goodnight Moon, that could be a real moneymaker as well. So it could go, you know, I think like follow your passion. You have a lot of interest, but follow what you would love to read if you were whatever age, you know. But do know that in the children's world, there's a lot more openness to publishing books by any kind of person, but certainly by Latinos. And I will also say there's a lot more fiction being published in the middle grade and young adult world than there is in the adult world. It's not easy, but it's easier to publish a book for children than it is for adults, especially if you're a person of color, if you're Latina. So I would say, and I think for you, because of your what you do, your day job as a financial advisor, and I love my financial advisor, so yay for you. I would say that would be your thing. Start with books for young people that maybe their parents can also benefit from, to talk about financial literacy in a compelling way. Start there. And I will be first in line to buy that for my daughter. Any other questions?
I
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Is it who's
Can
talking?
you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, Suzu. Yeah, Blanca. Hola.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
Oh my goodness, my question. Oh, the website is showing it's your website? It's showing a website. Is your website?
I don't think my website is up right now. It's my name, MARCELALANDRES.com. So my name should be here. When you see me talking, my name should be there, I hope, on your screen.
Okay.
Yes, Marcela Landres.
I see Olinda Naranjo, no.
Nope, Marcela Landres.
Okay. Marcela Hernandez.
No, Landres. Landres. Landres.
Marcela, I just
Landez.
put your link in the chat for everybody.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I when you guys were talking, I went through the Highlights Foundation. It's this, do you guys remember Highlights magazine?
Yeah.
You were
Yeah.
kids. Okay. So they have this fabulous retreat place out in Pennsylvania, and they have a scholarship program for you to learn everything you want about children's publishing. And so I went on it. It was like a week-long retreat. It was absolutely fantastic. They bring in publishers from New York to talk to you, all kinds of stuff. So I put the link in the chat box. So those of you that are doing children's stuff, it's a really fabulous program.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. You know, along with the SC Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrator, who also has amazing website Highlights, is also great as well. That would be a great investment. If you're all of you who are thinking of writing children's books, those would be two organizations that I would focus on.
Actually, it's a training center, it's a retreat house, and I got a free scholarship. So the entire week was free for me. So I posted it. Yeah, it was excellent.
Well, and this is Orlinda Naranjo. I think I indicated that I was real interested in writing a children's book, and based on my 24 years on the bench, etc. But I'm going like, where do I start? You know, so maybe something like this highlight, if I understand correctly, Darlene, that was where you actually, you didn't have to come in with a published book or anything like that, or manuscript, but you just came, this is what I'd like to do, and they help you kind of think about it. And it's a workshop for beginners as well.
Yes, exactly. It's a really great program. You guys should really look into it. Speaking of being on the bench, one of the books I want to write is called The 12 Things I Learned in Juvenile Hall, but it is for adults, not children.
Juvenile hall, does that mean the juvenile, like Gardner Betts here?
Well, you know, I did 12 years of detention ministry in juvenile hall, and you learn a lot of life lessons when you're in there. You learn you really reflect about a lot of things and question a lot of things. And so you really learn a lot of life lessons. So that's what the book's going to be about. The 12 things I learned.
I think that's a great idea. Oh,
that is.
Got a little pop-up saying that the breakout room's gonna close in 52 seconds, 51 seconds. Oh, I could talk to you guys forever, for hours on end, but I hope this was helpful. Keep writing, keep learning the business of publishing, because the more you know about the business of publishing, the more likely you will be happily published instead of unpublished or unhappily published. And the world needs your voices. We need Latino writers more now than ever.
Thank
Don't
you
give
so
up.
much. Thank you.
Can I